escaping the spotlight if you don't help me. I'll have to sleep in my car in the middle of this storm. You do not understand, I have a little girl inside. I cannot just let a stranger stay here. The wind howled like a wounded animal outside Ben's weather-beaten house. Tucked deep in the Oregon woods. Rain pelted the tin roof like gunfire. Thunder cracked in the distance. Each rumble closer than the last. The storm had rolled in fast, sudden and merciless. Ben stood in the doorway, one hand gripping the wooden frame, the other shielding his eyes from the blinding rain. In front of him stood a woman, soaked from head to toe. Her long dark coat clung to her like a second skin, her hair dripping down her cheeks. She was shaking either from cold or desperation, or both. "I am sorry," she said again, her voice trembling. "My camper broke down right as the storm hit. I do not have anywhere else to go. Please, just until the rain stops." Ben glanced over his shoulder. The soft glow of a table lamp lit the modest interior of his home. His daughter, Lila, want to thank you for joining me, was curled up on the old plaid sofa with a book in her lap, unaware of the drama unfolding outside. He turned back to the woman, her eyes large and pleading caught his gaze. "I cannot risk it," he said, lowering his voice. "Not with my kid here. I do not know you." "I understand," the woman whispered, voice cracking. "But if I stay out there, I could freeze. Or worse." He looked past her to the old camper parked awkwardly at the edge of his muddy driveway. Its back wheel half sunk in the soft earth. The engine had clearly died mid-drive. It looked ancient, rust blooming along the bottom edges. The storm wasn't going anywhere tonight. Neither was she. Ben let out a long breath, dragging a calloused hand through his wet hair. "Fine," he muttered. "But just inside the porch, not in the main house." The woman nodded quickly, grateful. "Thank you." He stepped aside, motioning toward the enclosed porch, a small space with a wooden bench and a few tools hung on the wall. It was dry at least, though drafty. She stepped in, dripping water onto the floorboards, hugging herself tightly. "What's your name?" he asked. "Ollie," she said after a pause. "You, Ben?" he replied gruffly. "Stay there. I'll get you a blanket." Inside, Lila looked up as he entered. "Daddy." "Who was that?" "Just someone who needs a place to wait out the storm," he said, grabbing an old wool blanket from the closet. "She's staying on the porch." "Is she nice?" Lila asked. "I do not know," Ben said honestly. "We'll find out." Back on the porch, he handed the blanket to Ollie. She wrapped it around herself gratefully. "I'll figure out the camper in the morning, just needed somewhere dry for the night." He nodded. "You're lucky you broke down near my place. Next house is miles from here." Ollie gave a small, tired smile. "Lucky is not the word I would use today." They fell into silence. The storm still raging outside, battering the tin roof and walls. Ben stood there for a moment, uncertain, then turned to go back inside. As he reached the door, "I want to thank you for joining me." Ollie's voice stopped him. "Thank you, who I want to thank you for joining me." "Ben, I mean it." He hesitated, then nodded once before disappearing into the warmth of his home. Later that night, after Lila had fallen asleep, Ben sat by the window, watching the camper outside. Its silhouette was barely visible through the sheets of rain. He sipped his lukewarm coffee, mind racing. Who was this woman? What was she doing out here in the middle of nowhere? Something about her didn't add up. The next morning, the storm had passed, leaving behind soggy earth and branches scattered like matchsticks. Ben stepped outside and found Ollie already inspecting her camper, looking frustrated. "It just died," she said as he approached. Lights flickered, then the engine coughed and stopped. Ben knelt, checking the tire sunk in the mud. "You're not going anywhere anytime soon. Axle might be damaged." "I can take a look." Ollie hesitated. "Would that be too much trouble?" He stood up, wiping his hands on a rag. "No trouble. I fix things. It's what I do." As he got to work, Lila appeared, barefoot on the porch, her hair a wild morning mess. Hi, she said shyly to Ollie. "Hi." Ollie smiled warmly. "Are you going to stay long?" Lila asked. Ben called from under the camper, "Lila," but Ollie just chuckled. "Just until my camper's back on its feet." "Okay," Lila said, then added, I think you should stay for breakfast. Ben sighed, knowing his daughter had already made up her mind. This stranger wasn't just a guest anymore. And deep down, something told him life was about to change. The morning after the storm dawned crisp and quiet. Sunlight spilling through tall pines around Ben's modest cabin. Allie sat on the porch steps, sipping from a chipped mug. Her coat, now dry, was folded beside her. So I did that so, Ben said, wiping his hands on a dish towel as he stepped outside. What brings someone like you out here middle of nowhere? Busted camper. No phone? Ollie smiled faintly. I guess I'm looking for something. Like what? She shrugged. Peace. A little silence. I needed to get away from everything. Ben studied her. People don't usually leave everything behind unless everything's burning down. Her eyes met his. Maybe it was. There was a weight in her stillness, something familiar. Not fear, not calm, but the quiet that follows after something shatters. You can call me Ollie, she added, short for Alexa. But no one's called me that in a while. Inside, Lila set the table for breakfast. The small house smelled of eggs and toast, filled with the warmth of mismatched furniture and hand-drawn pictures taped to the walls. Ollie moved easily in the kitchen, flipping eggs with practiced care. She hummed as she worked. And Lila, watching her, grinned. You're like a kitchen ninja, the girl said. Ollie laughed. That's the best compliment I've had in a long time. Days passed, and Ollie became part of their rhythm. Her camper remained parked. Damaged, but no one was in a rush to move it. She swept the porch, helped Lila with schoolwork, and read old storybooks at night, her voice soothing and confident. Like someone who once knew how to command a room. One evening, with Lila curled in her lap beside the fire, Ollie read from Charlotte's Web. Ben sipped his coffee, watching her with quiet curiosity. The way she read, the way she moved, it all felt familiar, polished, controlled. Not someone lost, but someone hiding. After Lila fell asleep, they did the dishes together. She's a good kid, Ollie said, glancing toward the hallway. She is, Ben replied. Like her mom. Your wife gone? Car accident. It's just been the two of us since Lila was 2. I'm sorry, Ollie said gently. Ben nodded. We get by. Lila barely remembers her. I tried to keep her alive in stories. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Ollie said, it's hard raising a child alone. Ben looked at her. You talk like you know. I've seen it, she said quietly. Up close. He narrowed his eyes. You say a lot of things like that, Vade. Careful. Maybe I'm just careful by nature. Ben didn't press further. But something about her answers kept gnawing at him. That night, he sat outside, flashlight in hand, inspecting the camper. The axle was badly damaged, fixable. But not quickly. Ollie stepped out, wrapped in the same old blanket. How's it looking? She asked. Like you're not going anywhere for a while unless you want to tow. She shook her head. No, I'd rather stay. Then looked at her. You really don't carry a phone. Technology complicates things. So do secrets. She didn't flinch. I'm not here to hurt anyone. I didn't say you were, he replied. I'm just wondering what kind of traveler reads like a professor, cooks like a chef, and talks like a CEO? For a heartbeat, Ollie looked shaken, but then her expression softened. Maybe I used to be someone else. She turned and walked quietly back inside. Ben stayed where he was, watching the camper gleam under the moonlight. One thing was certain, she wasn't just a lost traveler, he was running from something. And whatever it wasn't over yet. Ben stood in the fading afternoon light, hunched over the camper's engine, with grease staining his hands and sweat clinging to his neck. The old machine groaned in protest as he tightened a bolt and reached for another tool. Ollie sat nearby on the porch steps, sipping tea and watching him silently. You used to do this for a living? She asked. He chuckled dryly. Not exactly. I studied engineering, mechanical. Had big plans once. Real big. What happened? He glanced at her, then wiped his brow with the back of his hand. Life happened. That night, after dinner, when Lila had fallen asleep on the couch mid-story, Ben sat across from Ollie at the worn kitchen table. The soft hum of the fridge was the only sound between them. The storm had passed days ago, but something heavier still lingered in the air. She was 29, he said suddenly, voice low and rough. My wife, Emily, brightest person I ever knew. She wanted to be a teacher. I met her in college. I was building a prototype engine, and she brought me coffee for 4 straight nights. I thought she was just being nice. Turns out she thought I was cute but too dumb to ask her out. Ollie smiled gently. Sounds like someone who knew what she wanted. She did. We got married 2 years after graduation. I landed a junior position at an auto design firm. She got pregnant right after. We weren't planning, it scared the hell out of me. But when Lila was born, everything just made sense. He paused, eyes drifting toward the dim hallway where Lila slept. I thought I could handle it all, work, family, life. Then the accident, a drunk driver ran a red light. Emily was on her way home from her first day back at work. Lila was too. Ollie didn't speak. And Ben didn't need her to. I couldn't keep the job, he continued. I tried. But Lila was too young. No support. No parents on either side, just us. I sold the car, the tools, everything. Took on handyman gigs, construction, odd jobs, anything to keep food on the table. And her asthma? Ollie asked gently. He nodded. Started when she was 4. It's not the worst case, but bad enough that we need medication year-round, inhalers, doctor visits. Those bills add up fast. Ollie leaned back, staring at the chipped surface of the table. And yet you're fixing my camper free of charge. Ben shrugged. I can't take your money, not when you're stuck out here. Just keep Lila company while I'm working. That's more than enough. Over the next few days. That's exactly what Ollie did. She took Lila on short walks, painted with her in the backyard, and made up bedtime stories featuring dragons who baked cupcakes and kittens that ruled kingdoms. Ben would return home in the evenings, covered in dust, worn to the bone, but always greeted with laughter from the porch. One night, close to midnight, Ollie walked into the kitchen for a glass of water and froze in place. The light over the table was dim, casting a soft golden glow across the room. Ben was still awake, hunched over a small table in the corner, with blueprints spread around him. He was sketching something, metal parts, measurements, fluid schematics. She stepped closer, her voice hushed. What is that? Ben startled but relaxed when he saw her. Nothing, just an old design. You're still drawing engines? He nodded, a bit embarrassed. It's a habit. Helps me think. This one was for a solar-powered generator I was working on back in school before everything changed. Ollie studied the lines on the paper, precise, thoughtful, driven. You could have been someone important in that world, she murmured. Ben gave her a look, then smiled. I am someone important to her. That's enough. She sat across from him, looking between the sketches and the tired lines under his eyes. You haven't slept, she said. I'll sleep when it's fixed. Ollie reached out, touched the corner of the paper. You're building more than engines. You know. Ben met her eyes. There was something quiet and unspoken between them in that moment, something deeper than shared space or mutual respect. It was understanding, recognition. Later, alone in the camper, Ollie lay awake. The silence outside felt heavier than usual. She stared at the ceiling, hearing the faint ticking of the wall clock in Ben's kitchen. She thought about the man hunched over those blueprints, still clinging to dreams in a world that had given him every reason to give up. And for the first time in a long time, she wondered what her dreams had cost her, not the money, not the fame, but the silence, the kind that filled a small house deep in the woods, warmed by love, sacrifice, and the steady hands of a man who had chosen fatherhood over ambition. And somehow, that silence was louder than anything she had ever heard. It was a lazy Saturday afternoon when the truth began to surface. Lila had been playing in the attic, a dusty space above the living room, filled with old books, forgotten Christmas decorations, and cardboard boxes stacked like miniature towers. Ben had told her she could explore as long as she did not break anything or fall through the ceiling. She had been up there for nearly an hour when her excited voice rang through the house. Daddy, look what I found. Ben was under the camper again, elbow deep in the undercarriage. He grunted, rolled out, and wiped his hands just in time to see Lila bounding down the stairs, waving a crumpled old magazine. Look, she said, thrusting it into his hands. It's Ollie. She's on the cover. Ben squinted at the glossy page. The magazine was from a few years back, Forbes. No less. And there she was, same eyes, same smile, hair styled and makeup flawless. But unmistakably the same woman who was now in his kitchen, peeling potatoes. Alexa Morrow, he read aloud. Fashion's new queen, billion-dollar visionary. His heart dropped. Inside. Ollie, no. Alexa stood at the counter, humming softly, completely unaware. Lila skipped past her with a grin, holding the magazine like a trophy. You're famous. You didn't tell me you were famous. Alexa froze, knife mid-air. Slowly, she turned, her face paling. Where did you find that? In the attic, Lila said. Daddy kept a lot of old stuff up there. Alexa looked past Lila to Ben, who stood in the doorway, holding the magazine. Their eyes locked. Mind explaining this? He asked quietly. She put the knife down and wiped her hands slowly, methodically. I was hoping you wouldn't find out this way. But it is true. She nodded. Yes. My full name is Alexa Morrow. Ben walked in, set the magazine on the table. You want to tell me how someone like you ends up here? In my driveway? Hiding behind a fake name and a broken camper? Alexa sat down, visibly deflated. She looked tired, no, more than tired. She looked like someone who had run for a very long time and finally knew she could not outrun what she carried. I started a fashion company when I was 26, she said, from my apartment. I was broke, obsessed, determined. Within 10 years, it grew into a global brand, stores in Paris, Milan, New York. I was on covers, at galleries, interviewed by everyone from Vogue to CNN. People called me a genius. Ben folded his arms, listening. But while I was building the empire, I lost everything else. I trusted the wrong people. My CFO. He was also my cousin. We grew up like siblings. He siphoned millions from the company. When I found out, he claimed I knew about it. The board panicked. Investors fled. Lawsuits started flying. She paused, her voice cracking. Overnight, everything I built turned into a war zone. My face was on every screen. Headlines like fashion fraud or fallen icon. It did not matter that I was Innocenti was the headline. Lila sat quietly now, her earlier excitement fading. So I disappeared. Alexa said. Sold what I could, took what was left, and drove no destination. Just needed to remember who I was when none of the cameras were pointed at me. Ben was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked, why not tell the truth from the start? Would you have let me stay if I told you I was a billionaire in hiding? He opened his mouth to speak, then closed it. No answer came. I didn't come here to manipulate anyone, she said. I wasn't planning anything. I saw your house from the road. Something about it felt safe. Raul and I needed that more than anything. Ben pulled out a chair across from her and sat. His voice was softer now. So what now? I do not know, she said. Honestly, I do not have a plan. For once in my life, I do not want one. I want to wake up without fear. I want to read stories to a little girl. Then cook dinner. Then fix things that are broken even if none of it is mine. Lila slid off her chair and climbed into Alexa's lap, small arms wrapping around her neck. You're still my Ollie, she whispered. Alexa's eyes filled with tears, and she held the child close. Ben watched them, the magazine still open on the table between them, its glossy finish catching the afternoon light. The woman in the photo looked perfect, untouchable, but the woman before him, now quiet, real, broken, and trying, was someone else entirely. And maybe, I want to thank you for joining me, he thought. She was finally finding the place where she belonged. The following weeks unfolded like a quiet miracle. What began as an awkward coexistence slowly, almost imperceptibly, transformed into something warm, steady, and deeply human. Alexa, no longer pretending to be someone else, let her guard down in small, meaningful ways. She woke earlier, helped prepare breakfast, and laughed more openly. She still avoided mirrors, still cringed when someone mentioned her past life, but there was something new in her peace. However tentative, had begun to take root. Each morning, She and Lila would water the small garden out back. A patch of land Ben had carved out from the wilderness with more hope than horticulture: tomatoes, cucumbers, a stubborn row of carrots. Lila named each plant like a pet. And Alexa, kneeling in the dirt beside her, seemed completely at home. "Do you think carrots get lonely?" Lila asked one morning. "Only if they're pulled too early," Alexa replied, brushing soil from her hands. "Everything needs time." Ben watched them from the porch, coffee in hand, a soft smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. They went to the farmer's market on Saturdays, where Alexa learned to haggle over fresh berries and pick out the best apples. She made pies with Lila, folding the dough with delicate precision that came from years of practice. Though she laughed when they came out too runny or too crispy. "Not every dish has to be perfect," she said. "That's a new lesson for me." In the afternoons, she pulled out an old sketchbook from her camper. Lila was fascinated by it: the clean lines, the fabric swatches, the elegant drawings of dresses that looked like they belonged on red carpets. "Can you teach me?" Lila asked one day, wide-eyed. I would love to," Alexa replied. They began with simple shaped skirts. "Bows, a white and tinu, I work into for joining me." Patterns inspired by flowers and birds. Lila picked it up quickly, her imagination wild and colorful. Soon, the walls of her bedroom were covered in their shared creations: princess gowns with sunflower prints, superhero capes made of glittering silk, and even a pair of overalls fancy enough for tea. Ben came home one evening to find the living room turned into a makeshift runway. Lila strutted down the hallway in a tutu made from old curtains, while Alexa narrated like a Paris fashion show commentator. He laughed until tears welled in his eyes. That night, over dinner, Alexa looked up and said, "You know, I think I forgot what this felt like." "What?" Ben asked. This, she said, gesturing to the table, to the clinking of forks, to Lila's messy ponytail. "Normal. Loved. Needed." Ben's gaze held hers. "You are needed. You always were." She blinked quickly, then smiled. "I think. I used to believe I had to be everything to everyone. But here, why to thank you for turning me. With you too, I love to thank you for turning me. I can just be." They spent evenings around the fire pit, roasting marshmallows. Alexa taught Lila how to tie a scarf 6 different ways. Lila taught Alexa how to whistle through a blade of grass. Ben taught them both how to patch a roof leak using duct tape and prayer. One quiet Sunday morning, Ben found Alexa sitting on the back steps, barefoot in the dew-covered grass, holding her sketchbook. She had drawn a small cabin, something simple, with wide windows and a big porch. Next to it were 3 stick figures: a tall man, a little girl, and a woman with long hair. He looked at the sketch, then at her. "Is that your dream now?" She nodded. "It might be." He sat beside her for a while. They said nothing. Birds chirped somewhere in the trees. A squirrel darted across the fence. "I used to think family was something you were born into," she said. "But maybe it's something you choose. Or something that chooses you." Ben reached over and gently closed the sketchbook. "Well, in that case, we're glad you got lost on our road." And in that still moment, without grand declarations or dramatic gestures, Alexa, Morrow, fashion mogul, scandalized public figure, lost woman, began to believe in belonging again. Not to a world of flashing cameras or designer gowns, but to a kitchen with peeling cabinets, a garden full of names, and to people who had made space for her when she had nothing left to offer but her truest self. It started with a single photo. Someone at the farmer's market had recognized her, maybe not immediately, but enough to snap a picture from across the stalls and upload it online. The photo showed Alexa in a simple sundress, her hair pulled back, smiling as she handed Lila a basket of apples. It was warm, innocent, and unmistakably her. By the next morning, it was everywhere: Alexa Morrow hiding in Oregon, from runway to rustic, the fall of a fashion queen, exclusive billionaire found living with single dad and child. Ben heard the first car before he saw it. Then another, then a van. They parked along the gravel road like vultures, circling prey. Cameras, microphones, long lenses, all pointed toward the cabin like it was a crime scene. Ben stepped outside, shielding his eyes from the flashes. "Hey," he barked. Get the hell off my property. But they kept coming. Questions flew like bullets. Miss Morrow, are you living with this man? Are you still under investigation for embezzlement? Do you have custody of the child? Lila burst into tears behind him, clutching his leg. Daddy, I'm scared. Ben scooped her up and turned his back on the circus. Inside, Alexis stood frozen, her face drained of all color. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I didn't think anyone would. Ben turned to her, his voice tight with fury, but not directed at her. We need to get them away. Now. She nodded. But her eyes said it all. She had already made the decision. That night, a house was quiet again, though the reporters still camped outside. Alexa packed slowly, folding each item with care, her hands trembling as she placed the last of her sketchbooks in the camper. Ben leaned in the doorway, arms crossed. Watching? You don't have to, he said finally. Yes, I do, she replied. You didn't ask me to go. And I'll never forget that. But I know what this is doing to Lila. To you. She doesn't want you to leave. Alexa's voice cracked. Neither do I. As she stepped outside, camper keys in hand, she stopped in her tracks. Lila was standing at the bottom of the porch steps, in her pajamas, tears shining in her eyes. Where are you going? She asked, her voice breaking. Alexa crouched down. Sweetheart, there are too many cameras. Too many people asking questions. I don't want you to be afraid. Lila threw her arms around her. I'm not afraid if you're here. Alexa held her close. Heartbreaking. You're so brave and so kind. But I have to protect you now. You don't have to be famous. Lila sobbed. I don't need a famous mom. I just need you. I'll always be your Ollie. Alexa whispered. Even if I'm far away. Ben stepped forward, placing a hand gently on Alexa's shoulder. For a moment, the three of them stood there, frozen in a bittersweet silence, filled with everything that had been built and everything that had to be let go. Just before dawn, the camper rolled slowly down the gravel drive. Alexa looked in the rearview mirror, eyes blurry with tears, as the little cabin faded into the mist. She parked a few miles out, hidden beneath a stand of pines, and stepped outside. The morning air was cold and sharp. She leaned against the camper, pressing a hand to her chest, and let herself cry, not for what she had lost, but for what she had finally learned to love. For the first time in her life, Alexa Morrow wasn't thinking about headlines, legacy, or redemption. She was thinking about a little girl in mismatched pajamas, a man with grease on his hands and goodness in his bones, and the quiet kind of love that asked for nothing but gave everything. And in the silence that followed, Alexa made a promise to herself this time. She would come back not to reclaim her name, but to give something better in return. Not because the world expected it, but because love demanded it. The lights in the studio were blinding, the air too cold, the silence too heavy. Yet Alexa stood tall, her back straight, her hands calm, her face bare of makeup for the first time in a public appearance. Across from her, the interviewer, one of the most respected voices in American media, waited as the countdown ticked to 0-3. Where live? The red light blinked on, and Alexa Morrow faced the world she had once ruled. Thank you for being here. Alexa, the host said gently. Thank you for having me. She replied, voice steady but soft. The questions came slowly at first: where she had been, why she had vanished, what had really happened behind the boardroom doors. Alexa answered each with a vulnerability that stunned viewers. I was betrayed by people I loved, people I trusted, she said, and I made the mistake of believing that being powerful meant being untouchable. I was wrong. I was very wrong. The host leaned in. Where did you go? She paused for a long moment. I found a road I wasn't supposed to be on. Got lost, broke down, and ended up at the home of a man who had nothing and somehow gave me everything. The cameras captured her every word, every pause filled with emotion. He and his daughter, they live simply, but they live honestly. They showed me love without condition, kindness without expectation. In their world, I wasn't a name. I wasn't a brand, he was just Ollie. And for the first time, that was enough. The host looked genuinely moved. Are you going back to the fashion world? No, Alexa said without hesitation. I spent most of my life building something that now feels meaningless, the company. The legacy. I'm letting it go. I filed to dissolve Morrow Edelweiss. Effective immediately. Gasps rippled across social media as the broadcast aired nationwide. But I'm not walking away from everything. She continued. I'm investing everything I have left into something that truly matters. She reached for a small envelope and slid it across the table. This is the beginning of the Lila Foundation, named after the little girl who reminded me what innocence looks like. It's a non-profit dedicated to supporting single fathers, working families, and children who are overlooked by the systems meant to protect them. The host blinked. All of your assets? All of it? Alexa confirmed. Every dollar. Every property. Every patent. If I want to rebuild my name, it will be through giving, not taking. Thousands of miles away, Ben stood in the green room of the New York studio, holding Lila's hand. Both were dressed neatly, Ben in a second-hand suit he had never expected to wear, and Lila in a dress Alexa had once designed just for her, now tailored perfectly to her size. When the segment ended, a staffer came to lead them backstage. Cameras weren't allowed, but Alexa had requested their presence for a private moment. The moment Ben stepped into the room, she turned, and their eyes met, full of everything left, and said, "You really did it," he said quietly. "I had to," she answered. "I owed it to you. To her. To myself." Lila rushed forward, arms wide. Alexa dropped to her knees to catch her. "I missed you. I want to thank you for joining me," Lila whispered. "I missed you more. I want to thank you for joining me," Alexa replied, tears brimming. Ben watched them for a moment, then walked over. He held out his hand, and Alexa took it without hesitation. "You didn't just fix your life," he said, his voice tight. "You stitched together something that was broken in us too." He looked at her, eyes filled with quiet awe. "You didn't just repair that camper, you repaired our hearts." Alexa pressed his hand to her chest. "And you taught me that love, real love, isn't flashy or loud. It's steady, it's quiet, and it never asks for anything but the truth." Outside, 1,000 headlines spun, but inside that small room, the only story that mattered was the one being written by 3 people who had found their way back to each other, not through fame or fortune, but through grace, humility, and the courage to begin again. Spring came gently to the woods of Oregon. The pines swayed in warm breezes, wildflowers bloomed along the fences, and the little house that once stood alone now had a new neighbor, a modest cabin with pale blue shutters, built with reclaimed wooden love. The Alexa never went back to the mansion, the security gates, or the private jets. Instead, she returned to where her soul had healed, next to Ben and Lila. Her new home sat just across a narrow path from their old one, close enough to share dinners, stories, and morning coffee on the porch together. The 3 of them began building something that reached far beyond themselves. With the help of the Lila Foundation's initial funding, they transformed an old barn at the edge of town into a vibrant community center. It housed a small garage where Ben taught single dads how to fix cars and appliances, skills that brought both income and dignity. Alexa ran weekly creativity classes for kids, encouraging them to dream on paper and believe in their sketches. The center grew into a gathering place, a garden where children with tired eyes learned to grow tomatoes, a play area where laughter bounced off the walls, a room filled with donated books and makeshift cushions where story time became a sacred ritual. The old camper, once broken and forgotten, found a final purpose too. Alexa refused to scrap it. Instead, she and Lila repainted it together, turning it into the reading camper. It sat permanently under a maple tree behind the center, its inside walls lined with colorful books, cozy blankets, and twinkle lights. Every afternoon, children would pile inside, curling up in corners to read or listen as Alexa or Ben took turns narrating tales. It became a symbol not of wealth lost, but of purpose found. One evening, as Alexa prepared dinner, Lila came home clutching a piece of paper. "It's my writing assignment," she said, handing it to Alexa. "We had to write about someone who changed our life." Alexa unfolded the page, her eyes scanning Lila's neat handwriting. "My mom Molly didn't give birth to me, but she gave me other things. She gave me bedtime songs and drawing lessons and a heart that always listened. She makes pancakes even when she's tired. She tucks me in like I'm the most important person in the world. Some moms are born into your life. Some moms are chosen. I chose her and she chose me back. Tears welled up as Alexa finished reading. Ben stepped into the doorway and saw her expression. What is it? She handed him the paper. And as he read, he smiled through the mist rising in his eyes. Later that night, as twilight painted the sky in soft purples and golds, the three of them sat together on the porch. Lila leaned against Alexa's shoulder, half asleep, while Ben strummed gently on an old guitar. No headlines, no noise, no crowd, just a family born not of blood, but of bravery and love. A camper that once carried a woman running from herself now stood still, rooted in purpose, surrounded by laughter and echoing with the quiet wisdom of a little girl who had reminded them all what it meant to come home. And so, from a broken camper on a stormy night to a home built on love and second chances, this is not just a story of survival. It is a story of choosing family, of healing in unexpected places, and of how the smallest kindness can change the course of a life forever. If this story touched your heart, reminded you of the power of love, or brought a tear to your eye, we invite you to join our community by subscribing to Soul-Stirring Stories. Here, I'd like to thank you for joining me. We share true and inspiring tales that remind us all what really matters: faith, resilience, and the beautiful ways our hearts can mend. Subscribe now and let your soul be stirred, one story at a time.